Today, I'm going to share with you what I think are the most 5 important titles if you want to hit the ground running in finance. And also, I will share with you a couple of tricks that will help you reading them as fast as possible. So make sure you stick around till the end of the video if you want to know more about that. It might seem crazy if you think about it, but even in an era where every bit of knowledge actually lies on the tips of your fingers, well, books still have a place in this world. But enough talk. I gotta put data where my mouth is. So believe it or not, but in 2021, in the US alone, books have sold a whopping 825 plus million copies alone. The business and economic subgenres is grinding higher and higher every year, with a whopping CAGR of 4%. Well, I know, you say this is nothing compared to crazy crypto marketers, some fancy Tesla chart, and you're damn right. But we're talking books here, we're not talking stock market. This is a clear sign that books are a thing that is not planning on going away anytime soon. So let's get started. The first title I chose out of this list is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And the reason why I chose this, it is because, well, it's very popular, but it's very popular for a specific reason. And the reason is that Benjamin Graham is actually the man who influenced and mentored, actually, Warren Buffett, which is the most famous investor in the world. So this is actually the testament to the value investing method. It could be very intimidating at first, because it is, after all, a 646 pages long book, which it is pretty thick. I would not lie to you. It is pretty thick. But you know what? At the end of the day, the informations contained in this book are so crucial and important for you to absorb that probably would like to apply a few of the tricks that I'm going to present later on this video that will probably help you improving the reading experience of this huge piece of literature. Yes, it's huge. The next book we're going to talk about is Financial Statements by Mary Buffett. It might be misleading at first because it looks like it's a book which is actually written by Warren Buffett itself. In reality, it's not. It's written by Mary Buffett, which, even though she has the last name Buffett, it's not an actual relative of the world-famous investor Warren Buffett. It is actually the ex-wife of his son, which kept the last name for convenient marketing purposes. It's a very nice book. It's very small. You can digest it in probably an afternoon. It goes straight to the point on value investing, which is the discipline that actually tries to understand and gauge which is the real value of a single company and if it's a real business where you should invest in. So after you discovered more about value investing after reading this, you might also start to understand that value investing, it's a discipline that will lead you not only to understanding the moat of a company or understanding how strong a company actually is or other fundamental analysis of this kind, but also you need to get your hands dirty and dig deeper into the financial statements. So if your education is not as an accountant or is not rooted into this kind of things, maybe it could be intimidating at first, but I can reassure you that once you get a grip on how it works, it becomes pretty easy. Getting through the 10Ks of a company, it's not as intimidating as it looks like it is. Also listening to the earning calls and whatnot, it seems like a tedious process, but it's not as much. Going through this stuff, it is probably the most important thing that you can do before actually understanding how the business works and deciding if it's worth it, your time or not. And if it's worth it, at which price you should buy that business. So this book by Mary Buffett actually does a great job in teaching you in really no time how the thing is done, which are the most crucial and important things, because financial statements can have a gazillion of things that probably can be easily overlooked. So at the end of the day, in order to understand and decipher if a business is valuable or not, well, you have to look at key things and know exactly where to look in order to understand. So once you're done that, once you're through that, well, then your goal, really. Great. The third book I'd like to present you today is One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. So in case you don't know Peter Lynch, he is probably one of the most legendary investors of all time. He managed the Magellan Fund between 1977 and 1990, and during that time span, he managed to pull out a staggering 29.2% average return per year. So maybe you're new around finance and investing in general, and this figure doesn't mean anything to you. But let me tell you that the more you get into this game, the more you understand that two things are very hard to achieve. The first, being consistent. So having like positive figures year over year. So one thing is actually beating the market, not on a consistent basis, like in a random year. Let's say you were about to enter the market in March 2020 and perfectly timing the bottom of the V-shaped recovery.
V-shaped economic recovery.
V-shaped recovery?
V-shaped recovery.
V-shaped recovery?
Well, 2020 would have been a super good year for you. Also maybe 2021. But what if you were about to enter the market on January 2022? Well, 2022 has been a terrible year with like war and inflation rates and energy crisis and whatnot.
Energy policies.
Main gas pipeline.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Inflation. Russia use nuclear weapons.
A U.S. recession.
Well, you can easily see how hard it is to be actually consistent every single year and post like positive results every year. It is a hell of a task. So one of the reasons why it's good for you to read this book is because in here it's presented his investing framework on another way of investing, which is different from value investing. And you will see that in a minute because it talks about his way of classifying stocks and the 2-minute drills and other bits which are peculiar of his investing style. But it's super good because it will broaden your view on the markets in general. And this is a segue to our next book.
Excuse me.
The fourth book is a book by Joe Greenblatt. It's entitled The Little Book That Still Beats the Market. Why still? Well, because this is a second edition to the first edition, which was called The Little Book That Beats the Market. In this book, Greenblatt presents his framework on investing. So I'm a person that tends to rely more on data rather than opinions or gut feelings because data are undisputable. Instead, opinion is like my word against someone else's word, my point of view against someone else's point of view. Instead, if you have data, it's pretty hard to dispute. Like outside it's day or it's night. Try to dispute that. Hard to beat. The same thing goes with data. If I tell you that, I don't know, if certain stock price now it's that amount, price action is that. It's printed in the chart. You cannot deny what's already happening. In this book, Joel Greenblatt actually outlines a super easy way of making a selection of stocks based on certain criteria, which is called the magic formula in the book. And it is actually a reasonable way of picking stocks. And again, the fact that you're incorporating a method which is based on data, on hard data, it is very useful because it will actually leave out of this picture emotions, which is a terrible driver. Because if your investing is driven by emotions, by the fear of missing out, or the urge of being right about markets or predictions or whatever is your opinion on that, well, this could actually be the same thing as gambling. So, I mean, for gamble, you can go to Vegas, but I mean, this is not a casino. It's like the stock market, even though many people believe that stock market and casinos are actually the same thing, but they're not.
I think I want my money back.
Margin of Safety by Seth Klarman. This book, it's not like super new, but I mean, other books I've talked about it are not super new, so it's not a big deal. But the topic it talks about, it is an evergreen. It talks about margin of safety, hence the moniker. It is actually about being like down to earth as an investor. So do not chase big gains train, do not get into FOMO, do not try to make revenge trades or revenge investing or trying to put your money where you believe that the chart will go, because at the end of the day this will lead you in big losses. And that's a lesson you probably need to learn the hard way, but if you can avoid that, that will be super good. Anyhow, this is also a book which has a lesson in itself which is free without even buying the book itself, because there's a funny story behind this book. And the story goes like this. When the book goes printed in the first and only edition, it got out in 5,000 copies. And that's it. They never reprinted it. Never, ever. So if you pause the video for a minute and go to look for this book on Google, it is Margin of Safety by Seth Klarman. Go.
2 hours later.
Okay, gotcha. Since you went to Google it, actually, probably you already know how much is worth it today. It is a really obscene price for a book, yes. Even though what's in it maybe would be the most valuable lessons ever, it's really unjustifiable spending this amount of money on a book. But on the flip side of things, probably if you Google that, you already know that there is fake printed versions that you can buy on Etsy and other websites, or the PDF version is pretty easy to reach. And so that's the reason why I suggest you this book, because the contents are actually real good. The most important aspect that I think in investing in general is to think about risk before you think about gains. So this book is going to teach you lessons like this, and if you can learn them from the get-go, it will be incredibly beneficial not only to you but also to your money and your portfolio itself.
I feel good every day.
Now let's move on to something else. So as I mentioned before, I think that there are several tricks that you can implement in order to read even faster. And this could be applied to these books that I just presented and to any other book you would like to read. So let's dive into it. The first, it's probably the most unpopular one, and that's the reason why I put it at first and number one only, is because reading at the end of the day is like a habit. And it's like something that you can train yourself into doing. There's no such thing as a natural born reader or stuff like that. This is all bullshit. So reading, the more you do it, the better you become to it. There's actually probably no way around this. I'll be very unpopular in telling you that, but there's a gazillion of papers, scientific papers, that actually prove what I just said. So what you could do instead is try to read in such a way where it gets you easier to do it. So you have to read often, you have to read challenging material, and you have to read widely. Using these 3 pillars as a guideline, you can go a long way in your reading journey. Number 2 is connecting what you're reading with something you already love or you're passionate about or you know or you like. This will probably ease the reading process a lot, because if you read about something you're passionate about, then you're already in that kind of mindset because you are eager to know more about that topic. One other thing is that you might want to try to find a certain, time of the day, area of the house or whatever you want to read, which will help you out better getting in the zone when you read. So for example, many people used to read before bedtime. So be it. I personally tend to read during the day because at bedtime maybe I fall asleep and I don't want to do that. I want to read and be focused. Also because I'm reading most of the time finance material or investing or trading or whatnot. And I would like to be 110% with my mind and be able to absorb the totality of what I'm reading as much as I can. For example, what I do is I try to set a time in the day as if I have a meeting. I just strike that hour on the calendar and I say, this is my time for reading. So when the time comes, my 1 hour window, okay, I pull out my book, I switch off the phone, and I'm just there. I'm just reading. I'm just concentrating what I'm doing. I take notes or read whatever I need to read, maybe 1, 2, 3 times because maybe some paragraphs is hard to swallow, and that's it. And in this way, I make sure I don't lose the grip in any given sentence. So another trick is preview the chapters, read the index, read the keywords section at the end of the book. In other words, try to warm yourself up before actually reading the book itself. So this is super useful because you will start to getting a broad understanding of what you're getting yourself into, especially if it's technical material or sorts. And then you will start to getting a little bit along the lines of what's depicted in the entirety of the book. Next up is skimming. Well, that's a big one. Well, skimming, as the word suggests, is you skim through the chapters, trying to have a gauge of what the content of the books are all about. One technique you might implement is reading the very first paragraph and the very last one of a single chapter. That will probably encapsulate the glimpse of what the chapter is all about. In this way, you can understand contents that are very useful to what you want to achieve by reading the book and contents that are actually not. Because obviously, with every single piece of literature you read, you cannot stuck in your brain every single word. What you actually end up with by reading a book is like basic concepts, like broader knowledge that in a certain way will become part of your knowledge. And that's the takeaway from every single thing that you read. So next up, there's a trick that will probably put skimming at shame. And that's a trick that I personally use all the time when I need to understand if a book it is worth my time. And this trick is listening to the audiobook version of that specific book at 2 times the speed, and also skimming. So what you do is you find the audiobook of a certain book, and once you found it, you start listening to it. And if a chapter that you start to listen doesn't seem like has a lot of value to it, you simply skip. You go ahead a little bit. Maybe you skip a minute or 2 or 3 or 5. And you see if like you're still in that specific topic which is not important to you, or you change topic and so you can listen to it again. And one last thing. If you need to find audiobooks, there are like 2 places where I go for audiobooks. First is YouTube itself. I simply search on a search bar for the title of the book, space audiobook, and most often than not, maybe I find something. I mean, the quality is not decent at all. Maybe it's not even read by a human, but if you need something rough and quick, that could work. Then another place where I go for ebooks, it's Audible. Audible has a super great catalog of books. And on top of it, it has top-of-notch quality. So if you want to listen to an audiobook and listen to a high-quality audiobook in doing so, well, probably Audible is like the leader in the space. If you want to subscribe to Audible, I left a link in the video description below that will also help the channel growing out. So if you want to do that, go get a free trial of the service so you can figure out on your own how it works. Titles I mentioned in here are available on Audible, so you can also experiment with that. Doing this, in no time you can absorb a huge amount of information. You maybe can go cover to cover with a very huge and thick book, and also having a glimpse of what a book is all about, and understanding if it is worth your time and effort or not. Even though we talked about reading speed and whatnot, we should always remember that we should not view books as a trophy to put on display on our shelf, and that's it. Because books should be taken by what they are, an essence of knowledge. And every time that you read a book, you end up with a tiny little grain of knowledge, and given that, knowledge is forever. So knowledge is a valuable asset that you will have with you for the time being. And also on top of it, remember that every time that you learn a new skill or new information by reading a book, the best way to cement that in your consciousness is to take that grain of knowledge that you just learned and extract it from the book that you read and apply that in real life. So now, for example, we're talking about finance, investment, trading, whatever. So you read a book about a subject, fine. Go get that knowledge and apply that immediately in real life. Okay, I hope you can really find the time and effort to read these beautiful gems that I presented to you, and I really hope that they can give you the same kind of knowledge and that spark and that aha moment that gave to me the first time I stumbled upon them. And also, I would like to gift you with another bonus, because I couldn't cover another subgenre which I'm very fond of, which is the financial storytelling genre. And since you stuck out to the end of the video, I would like to gift you with 3 titles that I love a whole lot in this genre and that you can go out and read. The 3 titles are: number 1, Nassim Taleb, Fooled by Randomness. Absolute stunning classic. You can't go wrong with it. Number 2, A Man for All Markets by Ed Thorpe. This also is another super beautiful book. And number 3, Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a life-changing book. Go out and read it. So, enough with the talk. So thank you for sticking out to the end of the video. And remember to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and maybe like the video if you like it. And, well, I will see you in the next one. Ciao.